Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 4. Is it truly a perfect storm as it so claims? Or is it just an overglorified gust of whirlwind? Well, my name is RanmyakuJouten of Jouten Gaming, and this is my review of Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 4. Let me start off with saying that I'm a huge Naruto fan. Naruto is my personal favorite out of the big three during its run, and the series that got me back into anime, introduced me into manga, and second-handedly got me into content creation for YouTube. However, despite this franchise having some sentimental value for me, unlike other reviews, I'll be reviewing this as a game in the grand scheme of games in general, and not closet the review off by reviewing it as a Naruto game, or by reviewing it by comparing it to its predecessors. I'll be reviewing this as a game as fair as possible with no bias. So, when it comes to watching a review about anything, you want to know what exactly the product did right and what the product did wrong. Especially if you're using a review to help you with your purchasing decision. Well, that's what my review is here for. Let's start off with everything that the game did wrong, since there's more wrong with the game than right. Let's begin with what most fans will consider the most important if we exclude the fighting mechanics. Story mode. Story mode is completely lackluster with essentially nothing going for it besides the fact that we Naruto fans have no other choice but to buy this game because Bandai Namco has completely monopolized not just Naruto games but other anime and manga licensed series in general, which is never a good thing. Look at what happened with Madden. Or you're an anime watcher exclusively and tired of watching fillers and decide to watch an animated ending to the series instead of reading it. Yeah. Sounds a bit harsh, but it's true, and here's why. Let's look at Storm 4 as what it should always be looked at first and foremost, as a video game. We should always look at every licensed video game title as a video game first before we add whatever title it is into it. In this case, Naruto. You may ask, why is Naruto Storm 4 story mode so lackluster? Well, I'll finally answer that question. For the fourth and most importantly, and I stress most importantly here, the final Storm, quote-unquote, game of the series, and seeing how it is the final Storm game of the series, and on current gen hardware, and yet a huge portion of story mode is told through still images, with voice acting on top? I mean, wait, what? How does this make sense from a standpoint of a fan? Remember when Naruto Rise of Ninja came out for Xbox 360 9 years ago and everyone ripped that game for the fact that it had scenes from the anime rather than its own graphically generated cutscenes? Well, you probably wouldn't, since most of you didn't buy it due to its exclusivity to the 360 and most of you pledged your allegiance to the PlayStation Nation. But why is it 9 years later from that game and we're still doing this? And many fans shrug it off as okay? No, it's not. It's not okay. If it's not okay for one game, then it's not okay for another. Now granted, there are a lot of scenes that are rendered with the engine, and the whole game doesn't use still images. But seeing how this is the final Storm game of the series, why is it that we're given a game where the most important telling of the story is done via still images? Another huge issue, among a few others, has reared its ugly head in this game yet again, from Storm 4's predecessors. And that's the frame rate issues. You would think from the jump to current gen hardware that this issue would finally be resolved, albeit that this gen's hardware is lacking overall. But it isn't. But the problem still persists, though mainly in story mode and no longer in essentially every game mode, which is an improvement, I suppose. One thing that anyone would say about this game is that it's a beautiful game, and they're right. But the leap from last gen to current gen in terms of graphical power wasn't much of a huge leap. The game looks relatively the same with the exception of some particle effects, smoke, i.e. fire, looking better, or characters now taking battle damage. But in terms of the overall feel of the graphical output of the game, it's barely noticeable. But then again, that's credit to how great the game has always looked. If there's one thing that should always be addressed in a title that's going to be dubbed, is the lip syncing. And let me tell you, the lip syncing is absolutely terrible. It's completely off in all languages, including the original sub. It's as if CyberConnect 2 didn't care about it at all. despite having a delay for a couple of months. It's pathetic to see an IP like this that does have a huge fan base and makes some good money allow something like this to make it through the final product. Going back to one specific scene of the story mode, let's discuss the 10,000 Jupi clone scene. This scene was absolutely pathetic. I mean, I can go back to March 28th, 2006 and do a similar scene on a PlayStation 2 where we fight 1,000 enemies at once in Kingdom Hearts 2. And that scene is 100 times better than this scene. And it was from 10 years ago. 2 generations ago. Granted, the sheer difference in numbers is huge. But it still doesn't change the fact that a game from 10 years ago did a scene somewhat similar and it did it better, which is sad. Why is it that CyberConnect 2 thought it would be okay to throw 10,000 mini sprites in this scene, give them no AI, and have them in a circular animation where the whole group circles around? Literally, that's all they do. It's lazy, and for all that, just unnecessary to begin with. I mean, the small enemies have absolutely no AI or animation that's specifically their own, whatsoever. And this is supposed to be a 2016 title, as the final game in its respected series? Now, I'm sure I already have many of the Storm fans' blood boiling. And one thing people always praise Storm for is its boss battles. But just like every other title previously, despite being beautiful, overdramatic, and nice eye candy, bosses are done on a grand scale, but there's no substance to the boss battles. Once again, they're just too easy, especially when the quick time events come in. It leaves you with no sense of fulfillment, no sense of achievement, which bosses are supposed to bring. But then again, the overall difficulty levels have been dropping in games for years, so this shouldn't be a surprise, especially when the entire story mode was easy to complete. The most difficult thing in my opinion to do in story mode was to get a 25 hit combo off on bosses that have infinite subs, and not much overall health. And last but not least, my final few gripes with story mode. Why is it that in the final game of the series, we have a story mode with no free roam? Why is it we have to do a rather boring and tedious old school way of going through level by level for a series that had free roam in previous titles? Now I understand. The only free roam worth discussing is Storm 1's free roam. But you would think a game advertised as the quote unquote perfect storm and the quote unquote best in the series will only add features, not take away the main ones. And since we're on the topic of removing main features from Storm 4, why is it that spectator mode was completely removed? I mean, this makes absolutely no sense. Did CyberConnect 2 really believe looking at a screen full of names would be more enjoyable than being able to study other players' styles or just enjoy watching a match? Now going back to free roam. In order to access free roam, you have to play a game mode called Adventure. However, this game mode holds no importance and has no incentive to have you play it. It's not even necessary to play. Essentially, it's just a shoehorn of a game mode to have free roam. Now, let's discuss the fighting mechanics. The one main issue I always had with this series is its fighting mechanics. It's just impossible to keep many buyers or even people's interest in general with a one-button attack system. Some improvements were made, such as nerfs and buffs to some characters and other previous mechanics, or some cool additions such as switching to your support to have them playable now. But at the end of the day, seeing what all the characters have to offer would be something done extremely quickly, and the game itself would become dull after a few matches via online or friends after you beat story mode. Especially if you're into the more serious fighters of the FGC, or just enjoy variety, which this game lacks despite having over 100 playable characters, since they essentially play the same. Of course, due to the fighting mechanics being the same since its inception with Ultimate Ninja, this won't really affect the overall score, but it's something that I feel that needs to be stated over and over and over again until someone in CyberConnect 2 finally watches one of my videos and understands that this fighting mechanic, this fighting style is just not fun overall. Now, time to list a few good things this game does. This game clearly looks beautiful. The graphics, despite not looking too improved from Revolutions, still looks great. The combat, despite being very linear, is very fluid and can be sometimes fun, but for limited spurts only, with the right people, such as friends. The roster is huge with over 100 playable characters, which meaning you can play as your favorite character, but the main issue with that is They all play pretty much the same with one button. And last but not least, this game does the ending of this series justice despite going overboard a few times with things that the manga did not do. However, due to the fact this game is the final sequel of this particular series, and even having a delay, having all these issues, and even having issues with online servers on release week, is something that I just can't look past. According to Bandai Namco, the delay was supposed to have the team at CyberConnect 2 have the chance to fine-tune the game more before it's ready for public consumption. But yet, it still has so many issues that could have been addressed during the delay. Not only was that promise not fulfilled, but the promise that CyberConnect 2 made on bringing a great PC experience was also broken, with a port that has terrible anti-aliasing and only maxes out at 1080p, 30 frames per second. You see, the main issue with Storm 4 is it's a game made for Naruto fans, but not for the general public. And even with saying that, it's not that much of a great game for the Naruto fans either. We as Naruto fans, honestly, deserve more and deserve a way better game than what we were given. However, due to the fact that it's not necessarily for the general public, which makes no sense because if they would have done that, then CyberConnect 2 can make even more money by getting non-Naruto fans interested in Storm and having them purchase the product, but instead, once again, CyberConnect 2 focuses on its rather small market of consumers. And I honestly believe when it comes to licensed games, the developer should always focus on making it a great game in general before making it a great licensed game. In this case, Naruto. If you're confused at that quote, basically what I mean is developers should focus on making this a great fighting game, a great game in general, before they decide to make it a great Naruto game. As you guys can see, this game is an overall lackluster game for a game that's supposed to end a series. And because of that, Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 will be getting an overall rating of 6 out of 10. The sad thing about this game is that this game actually feels more like it's the original of the series, such as a Storm 1, with so many missing features, online servers not being that great, and the PC port obviously being terrible. This feels like a first go around for CyberConnect 2, but it isn't. And due to that fact, and due to the fact that this is not only the final sequel, but the 6th game in the Storm series in general, this game gets an overall rating of a 6 out of 10. I'm RanmyakuJouten. I hope you guys enjoy this review.